Okay, I think we should get going. People might trickle in as we start. So first thing, we're all experts in Zoom, I can say, after 3 years of this. Everyone comes in with the mute, and so thank you everyone for coming. Today we're going to be exploring some different projects and organizations that are working on grassroots innovations for agroecology. And I'm going to maybe just provide a little context and share a few slides just before we get going. We're trying to keep the format pretty tight in terms of presentations so that we can have a lot more time for dialogue and discussion, because we have a lot of people with a lot of expertise from around the world. So it'd be lovely to just open it up to a more of a conversation. A little context just before we get going. And so my name is Salumuel Oslund. I'm working with the 11th Hour Project. And we're supporting this gathering of grassroots innovation networks from across the world that will be meeting up together in Rome in advance of this CSF event there coming up in October. And in between that period, we've been meeting with different groups for the last couple of years. Really, different groups from these organizations have been getting together, exchanging dialogue, mostly informally. And really, it was in the lead up to the UN Food System Summit in 2021 that there was an increasing interest from different organizations to begin to think about exchanging from across international networks. Given that conference was really focused on innovation and technology, but many people from civil society and grassroots networks felt that it did not represent the civil society and indigenous and people movements, their needs in that dialogue, in that forum. So in advance of that, these groups were meeting up and discussing different approaches and different perspectives on technology and technological innovation. And eventually what we landed on was trying to provide a forum where we could get together and discuss more from the farmer perspective and farm worker perspective, what sorts of technologies are needed to actually support a just transition for the food system. So we've been meeting up regularly, and we now wanted to open it up because we know there's a lot of researchers and scholars and people exploring this, both the harms that are emerging around technologies, some of the risks, some of the possibilities of these different innovations, but also trying to consider what kinds of technologies are needed and how to support farmer movements and agroecology movements working towards food sovereignty. So with that, I wanted to thank Scola Campesina, who's been organizing and planning the logistics. Carolyn Ledan from Scola Campesina has been really coordinating so much over the last few weeks and months, and especially in advance of the meeting in Rome. So thank you, Carolyn. And with that, I'll share a few slides, and then we will jump into presentations. If you have questions, you feel free to post questions during the presentations, or we'll also open it up and you can open your mic up and ask directly. So I will just share my screen now. And you all see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. I have a little bit of a cold, so excuse me. So I just wanted to maybe do a little bit of more framing in terms of the context for the conversation today. And I really love this quote from Arturo Escobar, and I think it really relates well to the conversation today. So Arturo Escobar is an anthropologist and scholar on post-development theory. So he says, in designing tools, we design the conditions of our existence and in turn the conditions of our designing. We design tools and these tools design us back. And what I love about this quote is that Escobar really gets to this notion that we're sort of mutually constituted by our technologies. We're making them, but they're also shaping us. And it's the same with our environments as we use these tools to create and shape our worlds. And I think there's something that also comes up for me with this quote is this notion of feedback, how the things we make actually begin to have an effect of sort of shaping the way we work and the way we see the world, the way we work in the world, and how that can lead to sort of ways of thinking and being in the world that can sort of reproduce themselves. And I think for this conversation, we're talking about farm technology and innovation. And over the last 150 years, we've really seen how this sort of focus on technology and innovation within agriculture, there's been a bit of a feedback loop between the technologies as they're being created and the sort of scale of innovation, the potentials of those technologies, and how that's actually shaping and informing the scale and the size and the types of farming that we've seen. So that sort of correlation between the scale of the farm and the technologies and that feedback loop, that this sort of reproduces that logic on the landscape. And I have just this photo here from the Central Valley in California, where in the US, the majority of the food is actually produced. And I put this caption here, this is not a technical problem, because what we see is increasingly these, in the context of the US, where we have thousands of acres under a certain production, we're seeing increasing pest problems, all kinds of environmental problems emerging. And the way in which we're trying to address them is often from a technical perspective. How can we improve this here? How can we do that? How can we make sort of changes to the sort of the technical? How can we technically address some of these challenges? And I think what many people in this audience, I think, are aware of, and I think what many small scale farmers are also aware of, is that these sorts of systems themselves are actually the problem. It's the design of the system, not so much the technical problems that are symptoms of that system. And this is a photo also from the Central Valley from this year, and I'm sure people maybe that are based in California are familiar with this. This is called the Ghost Lake of Tulare, and Tulare was a lake in the Central Valley historically, and actually during colonization and early settlement, that lake was drained and it was used to actually produce to actually set up the agricultural systems there and irrigation systems there. And this year, with all the flooding in the Central Valley and across California, this lake, this massive lake, actually reemerged. And a lot of people have pointed to this as, again, this notion that we have all the feedback from our environments telling us that something about our ways of doing things are not working. And we can see directly how increasingly the scale and the types of farming that are sort of conventionally dominating the systems right now tend to be experiencing these types of shocks and crises. And I think what we're also seeing now, in parallel to this sort of increasing crisis and increasing issues, whether it's related to ecology, whether it's related to human rights, or the economics, we're seeing how these issues are now being reframed as possibilities. How we're seeing, maybe people are now beginning to discuss agriculture as a possible solution to climate change, how carbon farming and all sorts of different ways in which agriculture might actually be useful in bringing benefits and reducing and slowing down climate change. And at the same time, we're seeing how technology is being put at the forefront of those conversations. And there's a lot of talk of the future farm and the future of farming, and how innovation can sort of address these problems. But again, I think in the conversations that we're really having here and across the different groups that we're working with in terms of grassroots movements, there's a real questioning of the sort of logic and the sort of technological imperatives that come with these discourses around innovation, solving these problems, because a lot of the same logics are sort of embedded in those technologies and in those approaches. So what we're talking about, I guess, this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you're based, is a question of alternative futures. And we're looking away from sort of the conventional farming systems and the conventional technologies that are being proposed and emerging innovations, and thinking more, what sort of alternatives exist around the margins, what communities have been producing in sort of outside of those dominant systems. Because even as farming has scaled in size and the technologies have constantly been growing and expanding with the size of the farm, that has left a real shortage of technologies and innovation that are adapted to the needs of small scale farmers. And a lot of these farmers have began producing their own tools in response to this, their own tools, their own approaches, sharing those across different geographies and collaborating together to actually address their needs themselves. So today we'll be looking at a few of these groups and hearing from them, and really hoping to spark a dialogue between these organizations and the researchers and folks here that are working at the intersection of technology and agriculture. And so just in terms of the format again, we're going to have presentations from Anamika from GIAN and HoneyBee Network, Geert Furnier and Carmen Landuyt from Boeur Bricoleur, Qomar Unnajmi from Serikat, Petani, Indonesia, Ghislain Jutras from Le Capet and Wikimarché in Canada, and Doran Cox from FarmHack, and Joseph Righa from Prolinnova, based in Kenya. And Joseph has said his internet is a bit unstable, so we might not be able to hear from him if that's the case. And again, the format will be pretty much 5 minutes from the presenter, maybe a few questions for clarification. We'll go through all the presenters, and if you have questions, you can put them in, and then we'll just open it up for conversation. So with that, I'm going to invite Anamika.
Hi, Samuel. Let me put up my presentation. I guess it's visible, and I will have to also, let me come back again because I think the sound is not shared here. Let me try again.
Right. We can hear you very well, and the screen is sharing well.
Oh, no. No, the thing is that there is a problem here. Just give me a moment. I'm sorry for this. Share sound. Okay, I think now it's good. Because that's a interesting, where is it? Innovation. Yeah. So I come from the HoneyBee network in India, based in India. It was started in 1988, 89. And when, so I'll start with the logo. The logo says that when a nameless, faceless innovator comes in contact with a network, he or she gains identity. So that was the idea. It started because we felt that innovators, at least grassroots innovators who are working in the community, who come from the community, most of them are farmers or mechanics or small technicians or fabricators, they do not get an identity. And often, even in case of traditional knowledge, they are reported by scholars like you and me, but often as anonymous innovations. So the idea was to give identity to the innovators. And that was possible when many people came together, scientists, teachers, workers, these innovators, came together and brought identity. One of the things that is often debated is sometimes grassroots innovations might be seen as a makeshift arrangement, but we can give them more visibility only when science, modern science or modern technologies can prove them. So our need of validation brings all the other actors together. Though when we say how grassroots innovations emerge or how do they come, so the thing is that they are already answering some need. So that need might be left behind by the R&D, the formal institutions, R&D or market, right? And the problem might be too localized in order to be, addressed. But there are people who say, no, we are going to address this. And that's how an innovation, I have a kind of a diagram where I can tell you more about the evolution of grassroots innovation. So one of the example is like we all eat rice. At least in Southeast Asia, it is the staple. And when we transplant rice, most of the rice here is transplanted. So women, they stand in the back bending posture for long hours, doing it for 8 to 10 hours a day, which is a very difficult position for anybody. Forget it about women or, kids. So, and it has been there since the cultivation of rice happened. So much so that there was no answer to the problem. But we have a grassroots innovator who has made a rice transplanter, which is manual. And now, so one has to pull and it will keep on, the guiding wheel will keep on putting the saplings. Now, what happened? There were some problems. We saw that it was maybe leaving some gaps and it was not very good. Our engineers worked with him for nearly 2.5 months now, and we have a very good machine. And we have also now helped him to develop a mechanized one. So people who will like to transplant rice, they can get it, or the labors, the cost was kept low. And how we approach the market was to approach the people who bring in laborers from other districts, other parts of the country, to these areas where transplanted rice is grown. And these people, they said that they will buy the machine and give it to the workers so that their drudgery is reduced. So yes, there are different problems, so we cannot have a very standard cutout for grassroots innovation. There are very different machines, so it can vary from a small weeder or a handheld tool to a big machine, which I'm going to show you, a little complicated one. So each innovation is different and takes a different path. So we have to think about alternate ways in growing their market. Otherwise, they will remain as localized one and they will never scale up. And if you see, the formal sector might not be, like the investors and all might not be very interested in the beginning, because these are manufacturing based technologies and they take so they have a long turnaround time. So in that case, it takes a lot of time. That's why it is bereft of private sector players, mostly the investors and all. But that is where the government, through institutions like Srishti, GIAN, and NIF, they bring in funding for these, to support these innovations. So for any innovation to start, when we say that we first sense the unmet need, when we all feel, and it is not about a particular innovator. In fact, all of us feel there's something lacking or there's some problem, but we kind of decide to stay put. We are so busy in our other work that we think that this problem might be tackled by somebody else or something. But innovators, they think about it. And then the idea is to get motivated. Like, all of us will see things, feel things, but for doing things, you need a certain kind of motivation. The motivation can be intrinsic, wherein a person does it because he or she feels good about it, wants to do it, is energized to do it, has the capabilities to do it. Extrinsic could be some challenge awards, some hackathons and other things, where an external agency is giving a motivation for you to innovate. So after this motivation phase is over, where we are still thinking that whether we should go ahead or not, there is small incident which triggers us. It could be any personal incident, it could be any order from the customer, it could be anything. And that trigger, if we let it just dissipate, then nothing will happen. So no innovation or things happen. And that is what we call inertia. But there are people who overcome them through different players. So suppose I am lacking in something, I will approach somebody, and maybe it's like, if I'm not a designer, I know the problem very well, I work in the field, I'll go and find out a person, a fabricator, who will help me to design my equipment. So here again, network plays an important role. Then comes initiatives where we start playing with our ideas. And this is a very long process for the grassroots innovators. First, because they are materially constrained. They do not have much resources as against other institutions which might have, or people who are well endowed. So, and they're highly localized. Then they learn by doing. So it's a very expensive way to learn, but there's no other way. They cannot make AutoCAD designs and other things unless they have been helped by an intermediary organization, which we try to do whenever we find such innovations. Innovations happen and then diffusion. Now, one thing that has often been in the dialogues is that innovation, they feel that should go in a commercial way. But
And
for
then
us, yes, I will just wind up.
I'll do 1 minute. Okay, thank you.
Yes, I know. I am seeing the watch. Don't worry. I have it placed. I have placed it very well in my wrist. Okay. So the idea is that we feel that innovations may not be always commercial, but may have social or environmental benefits. In that case, we try to procure the innovation at a small amount because otherwise it doesn't have a very good market potential. And then we make it open source. So there are different ways in which we work and engage with the innovators, where we protect their IP, but also help in open sharing. These are some of the innovations. This is a community innovation where a non-stick, they make non-stick tawas, earthen tawas, like utensils, and it is a natural lac which is coated. And this was used by this was actually innovated by the community because they could not, they cannot have oil because that's too expensive for them. And that's how they, maybe during some ages, they found out that this kind of lac, when they are coated in the utensils, they provide a non-stick surface. I will just stop with a small video. So I was saying that like the tawa is maybe not a very complicated, or the utensil is not a very complicated innovation. But here is another innovation which is done by a person who is hardly a commerce graduate, but he made this machine, and I hope this is a groundnut thresher, mobile thresher. He has also made a groundnut digger. We have been able to support them with the help of the Community Innovation Center. So we work with different agencies to fund these innovations and take them to the market wherever possible. So I will just end it here. So the good part of this thresher is that it does not, it retains the topsoil wherever it is taken. The groundnut, as you know, are grown like they are underground, and they have, when they're uprooted, they have a lot of soil. And when we take these uprooted groundnut to the threshing mill, all the soil, all the nutrient-rich soil is lost, and we have the surface which is denuded. It is deprived of all the nutrition. Here, the debris of the groundnut makes the soil more nutrient-rich. The topsoil is retained, and because you are removing the dirt while you are traveling, so the cost of the total fuel consumption for carrying those groundnut is also reduced. Thank you. I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Anamika. I think what we would like to do is maybe go through the presentations of all the presenters, and then we'll come back and go for a dialogue. So thank you so much. And if you do have any questions, anyone that you would like to just put them in the chat, we'll note them down, and then we can come back directly to the speaker. So next we have Geert Furnier and Carmen Landuyt from Boeur Bricoleur in Belgium.
Yes, good afternoon. I'll try to share my screen. Is it visible?
Yeah, we see it.
All right. So good afternoon. We are the network Boeur Bricoleur, which is farmer tinker as a free translation, we think. So we are a network in Flanders, Belgium. of organic farmers and knowledge institutes. We started in 2020, so we are quite young network. And we started from the idea of combining farmers' needs for adapted machinery with innovations already in practice by other farmers. So the core of our network is the development of tools and machinery for self-building, and also organizing trainings where farmers can come to build their own tools, but also learn technical skills like welding and woodworking to gain more autonomy. And we are, of course, open source, so we share the construction plans on our website. And we are doing this now with subsidies from the European Innovation Partnership in the form of an operational group. That's the name of this type of subsidies. So I'm gonna take the next one if it's working. Yes. So this is an overview of the current composition of our network. So we have Bert van der Gijnst, who is our farmer developer and who works together with Vives, which is a university college, and with Inagro, which is an applied research institute. And of course, we have a lot of farmers' expertise in the network. And I work for CCBT, and we do the facilitation and the communication for this network. And I was very interested by the process that Anamika just presented, because we are quite new, so we are still discovering a lot of new things in the process. So in the green box, you can see our innovation process. So we always start from farmers' needs. And then together with the network, we select one project for the coming year. And then we have the development phase, which is pretty time consuming. Then we have the prototype testing, then the refinement of the final design. And then we organize a training and building week for farmers who want to build this specific tool, which mostly takes place in winter. And then we publish the construction plans on our website. So now Geert, you will present a few of our projects. Geert, I give the word to you now.
Okay, thank you, Carmen. Good afternoon or hello, depending on what time it is. We try to be quite hands-on, and I will try to illustrate it through 4 projects. This slide is the first one. It's an electrical laydown weeder, where 2 people can lay down for weeding or even planting on the field. There was been on the right, you see the finished machine. There has been a process, there has been prototyping before, there has been drawings made, and so finally we had a building week, 5 working days, we had 15 people, and at the end of the week 6 working machines left the workshop. One interesting detail for this machine, for the motorization, we are reusing parts of electric wheelchairs. Okay, next. And second project, completely different, is a self-built open GPS system developed by one of the farmers member of the group. On one hand, just the GPS, and on the other hand, even an automatic steering system. He built a working system, and from his experience, we were able to organize 2 building sessions. 20 people came. There was some kind of collective buying of parts, and So in 2 sessions, people learned principles of this concept and built their own system. Next. This is a project that is in prototype stage, let's say. In Flanders, a lot of farmers are doing direct sales of their products. So a lot of them are interested in adding eggs in their offer, besides vegetables and other products. And there is a lot of interest in mobile chicken coops. For different reasons, regulations make it difficult to build fixed chicken coops, and moving the chickens on the fields has a number of advantages. They can eat rest crops. It is can be interesting for the soil itself and so on. So from that demand on, we try to develop a concept that's easy to build, starting from an existing frame. There are modules for ponding, modules for feeding the chickens, that can be built together to form the base of the chicken coop. And on top, we are using material that is being used on the farms for making tunnels for cultivation. So this summer we built the prototype. We were 10 people. In 2 days, the prototype on a picture was built. There are chickens in the prototype now, and so further development, refinement should lead through to a new or final concept to be built next winter, I guess. The last slide is much smaller scale, but still very useful. Most of the people are using a T-tape, perforated irrigation tape, and everybody is either struggling with it when it has to be put or removed from the fields, or when it has to be stored. We have seen examples in some countries where it's just used only once and then it's thrown away. So we developed small trolleys, easy to handle, manual, pulled by hand. We developed reels, and with these trolleys we have 2 types, one in wood, because we believe in wood as a renewable material. The other one is in steel. So with this simple tool, people can have a much more efficient handling of these tapes. The building itself, we organized 2 building days. 10 people came and they went home with a finished trolley. So that's very short how we try mainly hands-on to develop the group, the cooperation between the people, and offer products they can use. What is not shown in the slides is, of course, the questions we have about on the long term, how we can make this group strong enough to survive, to grow even, and to develop also the aspect of sharing the designs of the different projects.
Thank you, Geert and Carmen, so much. We're going to jump to our next one, and I think it's something that's coming up, and that I hope everyone's sort of maybe to grab a little bit, is just the different design or collaboration processes within each of these networks. Is that they're usually a little bit similar, but there's a lot of uniqueness within each of those groups. So hopefully that will be something that comes up as we get into the dialogue. So next, we're going to move to Qomar Unnajmi from Serikat, Petani, Indonesia.
Thank you, Samuel. Is it good?
Yep, we hear you well.
Okay. I came from SPI, Serikat Petani Indonesia, Indonesia Peasant Union. We can move to the next slide. We have already 25 years now, founded on July 1998. We are spread across in 25 provinces and 95 cities. We almost have 2 million members and sympathizers. It's relative a lot, but it's very small in Indonesia because we have 2,070 million people in Indonesia. It's still very long work to go so that we can make a more radical movement, more better situation. Next. About the innovation that we use in Indonesia in SPI, perhaps a little bit different with another region. We trying to looking for knowledge from our traditional knowledge. So we think that traditional knowledge is knowledge management. It came from data, information, and knowledge, understanding of knowledge that become wisdom and then culture. Activity connecting to the agriculture, we can say in the left picture, it like a tradition that always we do before we harvesting time. And we can see there is a lot of things that we use in that activity, and that is our knowledge. From that things, we can isolate microbe, fungi, and we can make a fertilizer for vegetative fertilizer, generative fertilizer, and also to anticipate the pest. And the right side is a relief from our temples. It came from 8th centuries. And also in this relief, in this panel, there is a lot of knowledge, a lot of technology that is very good for nowadays, that we have to face climate change, and we have proof from that technology we could get better production, more better for the environment. Next. So from that knowledge, we make education, we make a training, we make a practice together, and we are in the position that education that provided by capitalism is for interest of capitalism. So we are going to another way, education that pro people is organized by people themselves. I think this activity this day is also part of it. It is education for the people that is organized by the people. Next. So we are using methodology peasant to peasant sharing knowledge. From that traditional knowledge, we share to another peasant. We make a lot of training, and also we make a school in the field. So we observe the field and we learn by doing from that things. We also involve a lot of women and because we believe they are the future of our movement. Next, Ghislain. And another, we also use social media and our website to spread the knowledge, because we have a very wide areas, like 25 province. So we must using this platform to spread our technology. Perhaps that's all what we can say from SPI. Thank you. I will be happy for the discussion.
Thank you so much,
Sorry.
Marin.
We also have public advocacy. We still have one missing. This mass action, audience, and public hearing is related with advocacy of the public policy. Thank you, Samuel. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you so much, Qomar. And we'll jump to the next one. And again, I welcome everyone. You can start putting questions in if you had them for specific speakers, and we're going to note them down. Our next presenter will be Ghislain Jutras from Wikimarché and Le Capé in Canada.
Bonjour. Hello. Hello. It's working.
Yeah, we see your screen and we hear you very well.
Perfect. Thank you. So good morning, good evening, good night, maybe. So I'll be presenting a tool that our farmer cooperative helped to build. Our organization was presented by Aurélien during the last meeting, so I will not go over the details of our organization, but mainly about the tool. But if you have questions about the organization, feel free to ask me or Aurélien later on. So the tool is a online free collaborative encyclopedia, similar to Wikipedia. And it's about organic vegetable production. The context, well, the region covered by our encyclopedia is mainly Quebec, but also the rest of the northeast of America. The language is French, and the different partners involved, well, there are mainly 3 big partners, but many other organizations. Overall, more than 40 people worked on building this encyclopedia during the last year or so. But the 3 main partners are a research center in organic farming, a farmer co-op, the Capé, which I am a member, and Aurélien too, and myself as a former teacher and organic farmer. So the funding came mainly from the government, but also from different partners, and we're open to any contribution. And it was launched a year ago, almost a year ago. So it's quite new as a tool, and yeah. So the process and the features of our wiki is so first it's collective, collaborative. So we built it using MediaWiki, which is an open source software, the same software that Wikipedia was built on. The content is free of use. We use a Creative Commons license. Also, we're looking to create a data trust for the ownership of the website. A data trust is like similar to land trust, but with data. So it's quite new thing, and we're exploring this avenue. So the people can contribute from anywhere at any time. You have to be, we don't give access to everybody from the planet, different from Wikipedia. So the people can apply to be collaborators of the platform. So they need to be involved in the community of organic farmers in the Northeast of America and share relevant things about our context. And one way we will use to create more content is organizing wiki jam sessions. So we gather a group of people and we create content during a few hours. That's another way to create content. So people can do it individually, but we're aiming to also create some collective sessions to create more content in the future. It's an evolutive tool, so it's editable at all time, the content and the container. So we create this tool because formerly we just had access to books, mainly books or static websites. And we wanted to have something that we can edit all the time and change it, compared to a book that you need to read it, I don't know, after 10 years, the wiki, you can edit it all the time. It's something that is multimedia. Sorry. So we can put text, pictures, videos, maps, plans, files, all what we want in it. So also different from a book. And it's holistic. We aim to cover different farming systems from manual to mechanized, different scales from small to large, different technologies, low to high tech. And it's not only about technical things, but also about social and economics. So one example to finish. So with the help of, with the contribution of our cooperative, we design inside the wiki, we design a section which is dedicated to auto construction. So a place where farmers and organizations will be or are already able to share plans and videos and pictures of their new technologies. This is something similar to what L'Atelier Paysan did in France to share their plans and pictures and videos. So yeah. So within 5 minutes, that's what I'm able to tell you about it. So if you have questions for me or Aurélien, we will be pleased to answer in a few minutes. Thank you for your attention.
Merci, Ghislain. There's things that I learned in that one that I did not even know about the Cape, who I have a close friendship with. So that was wonderful. So we're next going to go to Doran Cox from FarmHack. And I don't think Joseph is here, so we're probably just going to conclude with Doran and then go to a conversation.
There we go. Great. Thank you so much. There's so much inspiration from the previous presentations, and I feel like in sort of summarizing FarmHack, I want to focus, I think, a little less on the technology and more about the approach that sort of originated around FarmHack, around the idea that innovation is more than technology, and really at the root of FarmHack as a self-organizing community that came out around, sort of formed around 2008, 2009, in conjunction with the National Young Farmers Coalition in the US, with the Massachusetts Institution, MIT's Development Lab, was really around the idea that farmers are not in isolation in their innovation, and that agriculture is something that we do together, and that it's a co-learning experience, and that the tools we develop are a reflection of our values and the communities that create them. We've heard that from other presenters as well, but really understanding the process by which we can support and create the innovation for our land stewards, farmers and ranchers, and recognizing again that although hardware is hard and very local, that the ideas around how we create it and how we exchange are can spread with very little friction. They're global in nature. The ideas about how we work together can really can again spread without bounds. So we have 4 sort of theories around that are reflected in FarmHack, that we need tools that work locally, but that's something that we can do, we can create together. But we also need to create the incentives to change. How do we create structures that allow for that exchange of knowledge, but also the costs of that innovation and the skills that, and then we also see, as we've seen across the board, this common thread that we also need skills to use these tools, that just the documentation about how to build things isn't sufficient, but how do we actually, the skills to how to build is also something that was core in our community development, as well as the implementation and documentation around how to use that tool in the field. And then really important, I think, is this inspiration and side of things, the successful examples that encourage participation. And so that was a key part for those first set of gatherings around the United States. And we've seen, again, a sort of a proliferation of similar types of events, both in the US, but also internationally, that is really this participatory exploration is feeding other modes of exchange rather that are really important, that drive participation, that there's reciprocity, there's a gift economy, there's a real value in share and that our communities get from sharing that is exemplified by the open source community, but we can enhance that through our gatherings and creating and mixing and sharing and making and eating and drinking together, that's a really important element for creating those different and reinforcing those modes of exchange in our events, and really drawing on the history of agricultural knowledge exchange networks, that community club is not a new idea. It goes, it's as old as agriculture, that this idea of receiving ideas and information and inspiration and circulating through the landscape, again, not just farmer to farmer, but again, alliances with engineers and designers and customers, and that we all have a part in contributing in creating the food system we want. And sort of evidence of FarmHack's success is really sort of the spawning of other organizations that are, some of whom I think are represented here, but really where my own work has moved into some of the inspired by the Gathering for Open Science Hardware, the GOAT community that was built on some of the innovations around FarmHack and gatherings, and other organizations that have again come up through this. Again, it is this ambition for FarmHack to help facilitate this exchange of global knowledge into local production. And so one of the tools that FarmHack innovated was, and is really somewhat dated now, and other organizations like CAPE have taken it further, but how do we document and create forums where we can exchange those local innovations and ideas, and then adapt them and provide attribution to others. And what does that look like? And how do we do that using other open source communities that are developing software and tools for collaboration to enhance our ability to perform that function? And so the farmhack.org site was a prototype for what that might look like. But again, I think we're seeing the expansion of some of those ideas in other forums. So in summary, I'll just say there's some videos about FarmHack that I'd encourage you to take a look at. They're several years old, but I think they hold up pretty well. And I'll just note that I've been sort of working to try to document and understand these dynamics, and recently released a book on a lot of the origins of FarmHack and ecological agriculture, and how those ecological agriculture and open source technology can intersect at all scales across geographies and cultures to create ubiquitous, low cost, accurate and accessible tools so that anybody anywhere can access appropriate tools to grow food and manage their environment anywhere. And I'll stop.
Thank you so much, Doran. I appreciate to all the presenters. Thank you for being punctual with the time. That was amazing. Joseph from Prolinnova is not with us here, so I know that that Jacob Wanyama and Bear's Waters Bear are here. So if we'll maybe not go to Prolinnova, but if for those that are not familiar, Prolinnova, I put the organization in the chat. There's a number of organizations we would love to have brought in. So I recommend just checking them out. And then in the conversation, I think either Anne or Jacob might be able to speak to the work of Prolinnova. So with that, I've noted some questions. I encourage everyone to be putting questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand and ask your question directly. Big question. Okay, so I can.
What was the answer?
Yeah.
Has many more things, but I cannot
into
write more than that.
Would you like to touch on that, Anamika?
So I have written it. So the idea is that for protecting we protect the IPs, we file patents, not only in India, but also in US and other countries wherever it is necessary. But we also encourage open source technologies. So what we do, there are different ways. One is a technology commerce licensing, where farmer to farmer copying is allowed and encouraged, but farmer to firm has to be under a license. Secondly, so that those people who will earn their livelihood from that, they are not deprived. Secondly, we have GTIF, where we acquire the IP and make it open source, so that a person IP is not infringed, and they are compensated by a third agency. And fourth, we have a lots of open databases which are available on our sites, and these are with the PIC that the farmer or the innovator said that we can share them openly. We have made them open source. So, and there are several other ways. We have a database of 0.9 million abandoned US patents, which are open for anybody to learn from, copy, and because they have been granted, so they have they have merit because they were granted, but somehow the innovator has not been has not maintained them. So they are also open. So we try to find such sources from where people can benefit without paying a handsome fee.
Thank you. I see Jacob Wanyama. Jacob, would you like to speak?
Yeah. Thank you for inviting us for this meeting. We are sorry that Righa was in the field, and I've just called him and he says, actually the telephone is not very good. So I just thought I would want to point out a few things that is a bit unique for Prolinnova. And yes, Anne is with me here, will correct me or add in. I think the difference, or some of the things that we consider as unique, is that we have two approaches or two emphases on our approach. There is the technology, that's what most people are talking about, meaning coming up with a solution and trying to making the solution that has been generated by the farmers to be more effective. But we also look at even more important, the process. Why? It's because in the world today, you've seen that scientists tend to not recognize the innovation on the ground. And also, when they start working with them, the decisions are mainly the scientists. I mean, even what to do. You go, use something on them and say, let's develop this. We think the other way is for the innovator himself to take the lead, to make decisions on what to innovate and what to develop. And we as scientists, we go there just to provide the space for him to access information that he may, and we call it co-creation. co-creation meaning the farmer is striving the seed, but the scientist is also working with him. The other thing that is unique is that many times, related to that, many times the policies that we have tend to go the conventional way. And so we are working hard to try and change the perceptions and the attitudes of the scientists and also even the innovators to also know that they are important, so that the scientists can provide the adequate respect or recognition, so that the innovators will feel more encouraged to innovate. If you know that during the time of COVID, there was a lot of local innovations that scientists were always against and say, no, no, no. So the issue is that we try to change the game. The other thing is the resource. Accessing resources is a problem for the innovators. And I have seen here there are people who provide support in different ways. We also think that these farmers and innovators should get access to available research resources, whether locally or nationally or internationally. They should be able to control these resources for research, for co-creation. So I just wanted to point out these two things, these several things. Anna, if you can maybe emphasize something. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacob, for the impromptu sharing on Prolinnova. Thank you. I wanted to jump maybe to a few of the questions in the chat. I know some of them have been answered already, but I'll pose some of them that have not. From Bernard Triumph, question to Boeur Bricoleur. Can you elaborate on the selection process and whether there is any outcome in terms of marketing the equipment beyond the initial builders/users? So to Geert or Carmen.
Maybe on the selection process. So we first look at all kinds of farmers' needs, and then we have a more small group of the network with a lot of farmers, also organic farmers, and the knowledge institutes who are in. And then we select one project because we only have resources for one each year. So we select it together with the running network. But indeed, in terms of marketing the equipment, we are still searching. We are thinking of maybe selling like building packages or finished tools. But for now, we organized only one building week for each tool. So we are still searching for the future, how to gain some income, because now we are using these subsidies, but they will come to an end at the end of next year. So we are, I think we are still searching in that. Maybe Geert can add something.
One of the things we discussed, we live in a relatively small country, and even the organic sector is quite small within that small country. So if you look at certain projects, there's a lot of effort going into development and or even documenting it so that everybody can build it without any help. So we think that if this work could be shared by more people, it would be maybe that could create ways to I don't know, to generate funding or whatever. But the proportion between the effort in developing a tool and the number of people that will build it actually with the people we reach now, it's a bit out of balance. So that's why we are very much interested in international cooperation.
Thank you both so much. There's a question from Sarah Hackfort, and they're asking, in what ways does political regulation, being laws, standards, funding policies, etc., help or hinder your innovations? Can you give examples? And that's an open question to all the speakers. anyone
Yes.
would like to go ahead and open your mic if you'd like to answer.
Yeah. If there is, if you build something for yourself, now I'm talking for the technical innovations, as long as you build it for yourself, there's not very much regulations that apply. But in most settings, farmers are working with other people. So as soon as you're in that kind of setting, all rules about machine safety, about health, and so on apply. And not every self-builder or farmer has the knowledge of these rules. Sometimes you really have to document it, so that's not possible for everybody. So there could also be a role for groups or for networks to take care or to support in that domain, in fact.
I have a question from Maiwa Montenegro. Maiwa, would you like me to read it, or do you want to pose it yourself?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I put sort of a condensed version of a much longer question into the chat. I think I really appreciate the framing of many of the talks today around beginning with the question of farmer needs and farmer priorities. And then the next slide would usually be a process, a prototype or a tool. And I'm curious if in your world and in your experiences so far, that idea of beginning with farmers' needs does or might be able to be capacious enough to evaluate what I often hear referred to as the root cause problems. Like, for example, we might have a problem with pests, and the problem is identified as a farmer's need for more pesticide, but it could also be identified as an imbalance in beneficial insects and a need for more learning about agroecological management. And so farmers' needs would then lead to different pathways for solutions, some of which may rely on technology and others which may rely on a variety of other things, including access to land, gender and household relations, political, economic changes that won't come tomorrow, but really do need to be a part of the process for the long term. And I'm trying to understand how the technology question doesn't begin to preempt the wider array of solutions that are necessary for a transformation. And it's an open question for anyone who wishes to respond. Thank you so much for your really interesting presentations.
Does anyone want to address that question? Doran?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. It's something we really struggled with early on with Pharmac as we were looking at how we list tools, because again, you can create a wonderful cultivator when we're actually also looking at how do we improve soil health and reduce cultivation, and how do we substitute biology for steel, diesel, and labor. And so we started to play around with that concept around the idea of problem statements, and really framing the way in which we start about what problem are you solving and how does this fit in, and also documenting the way in which the tools are used, because again, we know we can use a tillage implement to destroy soil health or to improve it, and to really make sure that that full context is part of the documentation. But again, starting with I think framing that initial question, and then how we list the available hardware and skills with that is a really important part of the architecture for how we're interacting with the technology. And I won't claim that we have it solved, but we are really trying to create essentially a syntax for how we ask those questions and improve our searches for how we interact with each other on that question.
Thank you, Doran. Does anyone else want to react to the question from Maiwa, or we can go to a question from Bernard?
Perhaps
No,
I might.
no, that's a reaction. Sorry, that's a reaction. It's not a question. You ask anybody wants to contribute. Then I think it's a discussion issue. It's not a question I want to ask.
Oh, okay. So maybe Bernard, then we'll go to you, and then I see Qomar also has his hand up.
I think, Maiwa, your question would require a full meeting to be actually addressed properly. I think a major issue for me is, and I think a lot of the presentation showed individual innovators. Your question is really related to collective, not only problem identification, but direction of where a collective wants to go. A collective can be a cooperative, can be a multi-stakeholder, whatever, arrangement, alliance, living lab, whatever you want to call it. And it has also a question of scale. Farm is one scale, plot actually is in machinery is one scale that is not even neither farm nor plot. Then you have the landscape, you have the region. So I mean, if you really want to address properly a problem statement, you probably have a need to go way beyond innovators, way beyond individuals, way beyond farm and plot scale. And this requires quite a lot of collective action and resources. So good question, difficult to answer in practice. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Qomar, I see you had your hand up a moment ago.
Yeah, I want to respond about the structure drives. Yeah, so in my presentation, I missed to read out about that SPI have concern in a structure problem. So our struggle is concerned on agrarian reform. I think it's one of our problem in Indonesia, and also we are concerned in agroecology, cooperative, and so on. And I think that's what we do to as a solution for our structure problem. And I want to comment about what Sarah asking before about the problem with regulation. So we are in here also have problem with that about distribution of the technology and product that we share, because the distribution in Indonesia related with commercialization, but we are in SPI in not in that way. We just share from peasant to peasant. But there is a problem with standardization and certification from the government. It needs money. It's relative expensive for the peasant. So we are using peasant way. So now we are advocate to push the participatory guarantee system for our knowledge. And I have a pic, Samuel. Can I share my picture? For example of adaptation of traditional technique from
please
Maya.
go.
Wait.
You can do it, Qomar, or you want me
I think it's very slow, Caroline.
Yeah,
can you help me?
The maize?
Yeah, the maize.
It's on my phone.
Perhaps while we work on that. I wanted to actually, there's a great question from Sarah in the chat, and maybe would you be willing to pose that again? Or would you like me to read it?
Thank you, Samuel. I can ask if that's okay. I'll be quick. And it's actually for any speakers who ever want to respond, and my gratitude to all for the great presentations. I am basically wondering about the relationship of the innovations that you all talked about with scale, because I didn't hear much about farm sizes being mentioned. So I wondered whether, what kind of farm sizes are these tools and technologies being designed for, experimented with? And equally then scale in another sense, I was also wondering about, are they being thought of as scalable things? And I also heard Anamika talk about the importance of standards and standardization, and within that, the importance of flexibility. So I wondered whether they are, and I also, Jacob also mentioned about processes, which I like very much. So I wondered whether these are innovations approached as scalable things or as processes that grow in many ways, like a rhizome, perhaps. So that's my question. Did everyone hit? Did my
Yes,
voice
sort of.
Yeah.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah.
Answering that. Because our database is so large, for 40,000 or more innovations. So, and in India, mostly the farmers are marginal farmers. So there are small machines like the Bullet Sati, which I'm going to tell you about, which will relate to the second question as well about scale. So there are small farmers, and the one that the video of which it was shown is for bigger farmers or people who want to rent it out. Because in Saurashtra region, in Gujarat, there's a lot of labor shortage now, and these people are buying it because they want to deal away with, and with the unseasonal rains and everything, it is becoming very difficult. So that's why people want to buy it. Mostly these are they all mature synchronously, as you know. They are all hybrids basically. So all the region need to harvest the groundnut more or less in the same time frame. Second part about the scale, it depends on the innovation that you want to say, and for us, scale might be sometimes going beyond a district. We will, even if innovation is able to take care of one particular district, we are happy about it, because in terms of population, we are big. So even a small market is as good as a market of a small country somewhere, right? So in case of Bullet Sati, what happened that we did not have standards, and the innovator made it open for other fabricators to copy. Mansukh Bhai Jagani had got this. He made this innovation in '92, and he filed a patent, US patent, including US patent in '98, and he got it in 2000. But he made it open for all the fabricators in his region. So much so that now there are 400 fabricators who make 18 to 20 different models of the same variant. It's a three-wheeler based plow. And finally, we are able to get a standards made. But in India, we had to fight for nearly decades. Whereas in Kenya, when this was transferred, KEBS, the Kenya Bureau of Standards, could do it in 3 months. So it depends on it depends on the policies of the country as well, in terms of flexibility, in terms of standards. But in Kenya, what we found that the import duty on the finished machine was much lesser than when you import the components. So people decided to in fact import the machine rather than making it there itself, because that is again how the law plays with, how what innovation comes up. Now, another thing that I have noticed, and now because the policy is coming up in India also, is the scraping policy. Most of the grassroots innovations here happen because there is a blooming, abundantly available second-hand industry, where every part is salvaged for multiple life cycles. Here, we do not junk it into one sheet and let it go. So the steering is used, the axles are used. If the engine is not used, the gearbox is used. So once this policy comes, maybe our innovators will also face some problems, because using the second-hand parts is not only good for the environment, but it keeps the cost very low for even smaller farmers to be able to afford them. So yes, policies kind of shape up many things, but we all are trying, and I think it is slowly growing up. Yeah. I think I've let me know if I've been able to answer your question.
Thank you, Anamika. I think I think you really touched on a couple of those key themes there. And there's a bunch of questions in the chat, but I want to go to Jacob, who has their hand up, and then I think we're going to probably be close to time. So Jacob, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to mention about our concept of scale. There's a scale that is a fusion of the innovation to other farmers. And we do that through what we call farmer innovation fairs, that they can come and display their own innovation, and between innovator to new innovator or farmer to farmer, they can share this. But as I mentioned earlier, our big interest is the innovativeness, I may say, the innovativeness of the farmer being able to innovate even more and being able to access support. So our main scale-up approach, we call it scaling up, where we try to influence the policy, which is the environment for the farmer or the innovator, to make him happy to innovate more things and work within an environment that supports the innovation. And in that way, we think it's a more stable scaling up, because if you change the policy, as the previous speaker said, if you create a good policy that supports innovations from farmers, I think you will get more solutions, because problems don't stop with one. And every time the problem comes, we have an environment that supports this innovativeness of farmers. So that's another approach of our scaling up. If you allow me, I also want to mention about the difference between innovation and indigenous knowledge. I've seen a comment there, and we believe indigenous knowledge is the basis for innovation. A lot of times we go there and find indigenous knowledge and we say this is an innovation. Indigenous knowledge has been there for some time, but the farmer has been able to use that knowledge to come up with the new things. That's when we call it innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. So there was a few questions here related to scale that came up. One, maybe I'll just try to group them into a single question as a final question. It's really about this question of interrupting this treadmill of, as the technologies become more complex, or as you get more involved in the development of technology, how do you ensure that you don't have that process where it begins pushing the scale of the farm up and moving us along that path to more industrial scale production? Maybe that would be the last question, I think. Does anyone want to address that or think about that? And it's also related to evaluation and assessment of technology. Masha, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think this is such a relevant question. I think that it has a lot to do with subsidies and the kinds, I mean, this was already said, the policies that, and the policymakers and advisors that need to understand that this is the kind of, that these innovation processes happen in a very different sort of social and knowledge ecosystem. And that a lot of the farmers don't want to scale up. Like they want to have technologies, well, some want, but maybe not, that's not the goal. And that a lot of the subsidies in certain countries, that they are so tied to these technologies that if you're not wanting to scale up quickly, and for that you need like $100,000 tractor or something, you're not going to get any kind of subsidies. And I think that this work with policymakers and with this agriculture policy world, yeah, I think that that's maybe there's a lot of sort of educational work that's probably needed to be done there.
So we're close to time. I wanted to thank again Carolyn for planning and bringing this group together. And thank you to all the presenters who shared very graciously and quickly their work, and to all the people who joined today, just for your interventions and your comments. So you're aware, this group is, I think we're now about 15 or 16 different networks from around the world that is looking to gather together in Rome in advance of the CFS event in October. And I would encourage anyone here, if you would like, if as a researcher or a scholar or an activist, if you're interested in these groups, please do get in touch. You can reach out directly to them or Carolyn or myself, and we would be happy to connect you with them. And I think that's it. So again, thank you, everyone. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, evening, morning, depending on where you're waking up or staying today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maiwa. Yes, we will save the chat.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Samuel.
Thank you.
very much.
Well, bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Samuel, for moderating.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. for
Carolyn, can you
joining.
stay on the call for a moment?
Ciao. Thank you.